most surprising thing about crows so far has been their ability to recognize and remember particular people, and even just particular faces.
Researchers just did something no one had ever managed before. They used artificial intelligence to listen in on wild crows, and in a single season, it pulled more than 127,000 calls out of the noise. The vast majority of them sounds no human being had ever heard.
They're using the same structures in their brain to recognize threats and rewards as we were.
Behavioral ecologist Daniela Canestrari had spent nearly 30 years certain these birds were saying far more than we could catch. She was right. Buried in that flood of audio was something the entire field had walked past for a century, hiding in plain sight. And the moment the AI surfaced it, everything we thought we knew about crows began to fall apart. The silence that wasn't. Before I tell you what she heard, I need you to understand what a crow actually is, because I promise you've been getting it wrong your whole life. That black bird on the wire outside your window is not pecking around on instinct, waiting for winter so it can fly somewhere warmer. It is thinking. Not in the cute, hopeful way we like to imagine animals thinking. In a cold, deliberate, planning 3 moves ahead way that has been quietly embarrassing scientists for decades. Crows solve multi-step puzzles. They make tools. And I don't mean they grab a handy stick, I mean they build one, bending a piece of wire into a hook because the job in front of them needs a hook. They plan for later. They'll hide food. And then, if they think another crow was watching them do it, they'll sneak back and move it somewhere new. Stop and really sit with that one. To move that food, the crow has to understand that another mind saw something, that the other mind knows, and that it can be tricked. That's a kind of awareness we used to believe belonged to humans and almost nothing else on the planet. And then there's the thing with faces. This is the part that genuinely gets under my skin. Researchers at the University of Washington in Seattle wore a specific mask while they trapped and banded a group of crows. Years later, the crows were still dive-bombing anyone who wore that mask, screaming, scolding, furious. And not just the birds who'd actually been caught. Their chicks did it. Neighbor crows who had never once seen the trapping happen did it too. The warning had been handed down, bird to bird, parent to child, like a story around a fire. It recognized your face the 3rd time you walked past. That's not instinct firing off. That's a culture teaching its young who the enemy is. So here's the thing that kept Daniela Canestrari awake. We could see all of this, all this intelligence, right out in the open. We just could not hear it. For all those decades, with all that evidence stacked up in front of us, we had almost no real idea what crows were actually saying to one another. The smartest bird on earth, running circles around our expectations. And we were standing outside the conversation with our hands clapped over our ears. Except, here's the turn. It turns out the crows were never quiet at all. We were just deaf to them. And the day the technology finally caught up to the bird, what came pouring out of that audio was something absolutely nobody on that team was ready for. A machine that listens from the inside. Let me actually take you there. Northern Spain, there's a population of carrion crows that Canestrari and her research partner, Vittorio Baglione, have been watching for decades. And even by crow standards, these birds are strange. Most European crows raise their young the way you'd expect. 2 parents, a nest, done. Not this population. These crows do something called cooperative breeding, where the whole extended family piles in to raise the chicks. Older siblings from last year, more distant relatives who've been let into the group, they take shifts guarding the nest, they rotate lookout duty, they coordinate who feeds the babies and when. They make group decisions, when to gang up on a hawk, when to back off, how to split the exhausting months-long grind of keeping a nest of chicks alive. And you cannot run a society like that on silence. Baglione and Canestrari were certain of it. A family that organized has to be talking constantly, checking in, negotiating, passing information back and forth all day long. The problem was they could never catch it happening, because a microphone stuck on a branch only ever picked up the big, loud, carrying caw, the sound you already know from 100 horror movies. Canestrari had this nagging hunch that the real conversation was happening somewhere else entirely, quieter, closer, down in the tiny intimate space between 2 birds who already trust each other. Sounds that were never designed to travel, which meant no microphone on Earth was ever going to catch them from across a field. She needed to get inside the conversation itself, and she knew she couldn't do it alone. That's where a group called the Earth Species Project walks into the story. Part AI lab, part conservation outfit, chasing one frankly insane goal: use artificial intelligence to decode what animals are actually saying to each other. Their chief scientist is a machine learning specialist named Olivier Piecoin, the kind of guy who could be off building chatbots for an obscene salary somewhere, and instead pointed his whole team at a bunch of crows in a Spanish forest. And what they built for him is a neural network called Voxaboxen. Real quick, before we go further, if the idea that we are this close to reading a wild animal's mind does something to you, do me a favor and hit subscribe right now. Because what these people are about to pull out of the noise is the kind of discovery that quietly rewrites what you thought you knew about the planet you live on, and I don't want you to miss where this goes. Here's what Voxaboxen actually does. They borrowed it from the tech that lets a computer spot faces and cars inside a photograph. But instead of drawing a box around an object in a picture, it draws a box in time around a single sound, marking exactly where one call begins and ends, even when a dozen crows are all shrieking over the top of each other at once. That chaotic, overlapping wall of noise around a nest. Adults calling, chicks begging, neighbors challenging, a parasite chick screaming for food. The mess that always, every time, defeated human researchers. Voxaboxen cut straight through it. Then they built the other half. Tiny tags, light enough to clip onto a crow's tail feathers without the bird seeming to notice or care. Each one carrying a little microphone, riding on the bird's own back. Not across the clearing, on the animal, recording its entire world from the inside, from the nest, from ground level, for days at a stretch, until the tag falls off and pings a signal so the team can come find it. And before they trusted any of it, they checked the nest cameras to make sure the tags weren't changing how the birds behaved. They weren't. The crows just went on living their lives, foraging, guarding, feeding, squabbling, while the little machines on their backs quietly recorded everything. And then Canestrari sat down and started going through what those tags had captured, and the very first number that came back stopped the entire team cold. What 127,000 voices revealed? 127,000 vocalizations from a single breeding season. Say that number slowly. Not 127,000 caws logged from a safe distance. 127,000 separate, distinct sounds, found and sorted by the AI, one at a time, from deep inside crow family life. But the number wasn't even the part that floored them. This was. Almost none of those 127,000 sounds were the loud caw. The famous crow sound, the one every scientific paper for the last 100 years had been built around, barely showed up. The overwhelming majority of what the crows were saying was quiet, soft, low, little murmurs you would never in a million years catch from more than a few feet away. Which means the entire science of crow communication, this whole towering library of research, had been built on the single loudest thing crows ever do: the shouting. Just the shouting. And underneath the shouting, this entire time, there was a second layer nobody knew was there. Constant, rich, private. Let me put it a way that'll stick. Imagine aliens studying humanity, but their equipment could only pick up fire alarms, stadium roars, and car horns. They'd write whole encyclopedias about us, and miss every single conversation you've ever had with someone you love. Every whisper, every "I've got you" murmured over a crib at 3 a.m. That is precisely what we'd been doing to crows. We recorded the alarms. We missed the entire relationship. And a hidden layer like that changes everything about what's happening inside that bird's head. Think about it. You don't develop a whole vocabulary of soft, private, close-range calls unless you've got delicate, specific things to say. Unless that murmur between two adult crows on the edge of a nest is carrying real information, aimed at exactly one listener, built for exactly that moment. That's not background noise. That is one mind pointing meaning at another mind and fully expecting to be understood. Canestrari has been completely blunt about it. There was no way to even begin making sense of this without AI. The data was just too enormous, too tangled, for any human ear to get through. So, the team had found it, the hidden language of one of the smartest animals alive, which left one question hanging in the air, the one that should raise the hair on your arms right now. If crows have been doing this the whole time, right under our noses, then who else is? And the second those same tools swung toward other animals, the answer started coming back terrifyingly fast. The line between them and us. This is where it stops being a story about crows. The Earth Species Project didn't stop at Voxaboxen. They built something called Nature LM Audio. Picture the AI behind human speech recognition, except trained on the recorded sounds of hundreds of different species. And then they pointed it at the animal kingdom, and the same eerie thing kept happening, over and over. African elephants, it turns out, appear to call each other by something a lot like names, a specific sound for a specific individual. Marmoset monkeys seem to do the same thing. Sperm whales make clicking patterns that split into distinct dialects between different social groups. And here's the part that gets me. The young whales learn the dialect of the family they grow up in, the exact same way you picked up the accent and the words of the people who raised you. Belugas, elephants, marmosets, whales, crows. Again and again, the AI keeps dredging up the same buried architecture, small sounds combining into bigger meanings, specific calls pointing at specific things, the meaning itself bending depending on who's talking to whom. Can you feel the floor shifting yet? Because here is the story we've been telling ourselves for our entire existence as a species. There's us, with language, with meaning, with real conversation. And there's them. Instinct, reflex, dumb automatic signals. One clean line down the middle, and surprise, we put ourselves on the good side of it. That line is dissolving right now, in real time. And not because some scientist desperately wants it to be true, because the machines keep finding the same fingerprints of language in creatures that branched away from us tens of millions of years ago. And these researchers are careful. They've been burned before by people who read too much into an animal's behavior because they wanted the magic to be there. But careful is not the same thing as wrong, and every last piece of this evidence is leaning in one single direction. So that crow on the wire has never once cared about our tidy little line. It recognized your face. It clocked what you were carrying, whether you were moving fast or slow, whether you were a threat. It made a soft sound to a member of its family, the exact kind of sound we could never hear until this year. And that family member changed what it was doing in response. We still don't know what the sound meant, but for the first time in human history, we know for a fact that it meant something. And that quietly changes what we owe them. The sky is full of minds. So what do we actually do with this? Because once you know crows are running a real communication system, structure, meaning, private conversation, you can't go back to treating them like little feathered machines twitching out reflexes. You have to sit with something genuinely uncomfortable. We have spent the entire history of our species sharing every street, every field, every rooftop with creatures that have perspectives, that talk about those perspectives, that have been trying to be understood the whole time, in a language we simply didn't have the ears to hear. And the tools are only getting sharper. Every season, the picture comes into higher resolution. The same kind of AI that cracked open the crows is already turning on belugas in the Arctic and elephants on the savannah, mapping who says what and when, with a precision that was pure science fiction 10 years ago. The old wall that held this entire field back, the fact that a human being had to sit and hand label every individual sound, one at a time, for years, that wall is just gone now. The machines do that part, which means the questions we couldn't even dream of asking before are suddenly sitting right there on the table. And here's the part I honestly can't shake. We've always pictured the world as this quiet place with us alone at the center, the only ones who really talk. That was never true. It was never quiet. It was crowded, packed with conversation we couldn't tune into. The crow on that wire has been in the middle of a sentence this entire time. We're only just now learning how to listen. So if this rearranged something in your head the way it did in mine, subscribe and stay with me. This story is nowhere near over, and I want us here for every single piece of it as it breaks. And then, do one thing for me down in the comments. That soft call a crow makes to its own family, the one we were never supposed to hear, what do you think it's actually saying? I read these. I really want to know what you believe that bird is telling the ones it loves.